Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. We are going to help you with your living space. A lot of times we want to make some changes to living room, dining room, bedroom, whatever. Not really sure what works. She's sure. I've learned so much from her in the last number of weeks. Even the fact that interior design is a science. It's not just throwing a pillow on your sofa. She is Mary Jo Major. She's our professional of the year. We're talking trends today. Welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
It's so good to have you back here. I want to share with everybody 631-319-6275. That's our number if you want to reach out. 631-319-6275 or instant feedback, Steve at gmail.com. So I'm always careful when I say trends and decorating because I feel sometimes people hear the word trend and like, oh, well, I want to stay away from that because that's going to be outdated in a year. That's
Right.
not what we're talking about, right?
Right. No, we're not talking about that. It's trends, as with everything, there's certain things that are more popular than others. So, just like with fashion, you can kind of hop on board or let it go by you.
Mm. And it's not to say that you do something today and it's not going to be relevant in a few years.
Right.
It's going to still have a place, although there are, new ideas that come along the way. What about color? There's that I see like an ebb and flow between cool colors, warm colors, combination of what are people gravitating toward right now?
Yes. So I think we're kind of coming out of what I would call like the gray years, where everyone wanted everything gray, or as that was kind of the go-to color for paint or even kitchen cabinets. It was always gray, gray.
Hmm.
And I think, through the last, I don't know, couple years or so, we've started to see a real big uptick and just a lot of color. And there are certain colors that are more popular right now than others, but I would say in general, people want something that's not gray on their walls anymore. Even if it is, those beige and tans that we had like 30 years ago, those are kind of coming back. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah. So, in a different
Hmm.
way, but there is this desire to create more warmth and to have something that has a little bit more personality than kind of the background that was for a long time kind of the main color.
And I totally remember that. I totally remember that. And
Everyone everyone wanted it. Everyone wanted the gray somewhere, which
yeah.
is fine. There's nothing wrong with the gray. It's just
Hmm.
changing now. Yeah, just a
Yeah.
little. Just a
Well, I
little.
I remember the, call it beige off-white
Yeah.
colors. And then for me, that transitioned into a gold color, yeah,
Yes.
yellowy gold. Got to be careful there.
Yes.
It can look gross.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it took a while to nail that one color, but that was the offshoot of that, I want to say like a light brown,
Yes.
and which can work with a blue too, the right kind of blue.
It was, and I think it was usually paired with some sort of red or coral or even, black. Black was really in there too. People did a lot of those black granite countertops. So,
I have that right now. I inherited that.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we
Which,
spoke about that. Mm.
yes, we did. Yes. Yeah. And there's ways you can update, that's not necessarily a totally dated look. There's definitely different ways you can pair it to make it feel
Let's
fresh.
okay, let's talk about that for just a
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
So, the let's say you have what I'm living with, the
Yeah.
black granite
Mm-hmm.
countertops.
Mm-hmm.
To change the look,
Mm-hmm.
without changing the countertops, big
Yep.
expense, big deal.
Yep.
What can you do around that to give it more of a fresher, contemporary look? Is there
Sure.
anything?
So the first thing that comes to mind, it would also depend on kind of what you want, what the rest of, your house looks like. I think about things from a holistic standpoint and how what you have in other parts of the house kind of flow into each room. So
Mhm.
without knowing what else you have or what else you want, my first inclination is to paint the cabinets like a light blue and to kind of contrast that black with a color.
Hmm.
So I know I mean, that's a bold style choice. But it definitely looks good. And it would kind of create more of this kind of the black and white vibe, if you will, but the cabinets then now becoming the focal point.
Right. I'm just fearful of it looking like, need the best description. Give me a moment.
That's okay.
The country farmhouse look,
Right.
if you know where I'm
So
going with that.
yes. So blue, it all depends on, again, the shades. I wish I could show you a visual of what I'm have in my head, but it actually looks more modern and
Mm,
more what I would describe the word people use sometimes as transitional.
mm,
So it's not traditional and it's not kind of modern or contemporary. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. And it is a commitment, though. When you do kind of those color choices, it is, you're making a statement. But what I tend to do when you have something that you don't want to change is to focus, kind of make people focus on something else and to make it feel fresh somehow. And you almost, in a weird way, ignore it. That sounds the opposite of what we're trying to do, but you just kind of downplay it. So, yeah,
okay.
I'll have to find an inspiration photo, Steve, and show you.
Yeah, I think I have it in my mind.
Okay. Okay.
The thing that still remains is the two words that is the bane of my existence, and that is cat hair. On that,
Oh,
oh my gosh, I did them Sunday, and it like I went out, came back, and then you can see cat hair, you can see the pity paw prints, you can see all
on
like,
on your countertop?
yes, oh my gosh.
Oh, I maybe you just need to dye there for black. Maybe
I never
maybe
thought
you
of
just
that.
need to
I
kind
need
of
a
go
black
with the
cat.
flow.
I need a black cat. That's what it
You need a
is.
black
That
cat,
all right.
and they're
Yeah,
the
I'm
only
gonna
ones
open a
allowed on the
door.
counter.
I'm opening the door, guys. You're out of here. You're not trending. You're not
That's
trending.
right. That's
Mary
right. You
Jo
don't
said
fit in with
yeah,
you
you're
don't
not
fit with the
trending.
decor.
Right. You don't match. Wow. Okay. So back to color. So we're
Yeah.
talking about, and I always get them confused,
Okay.
cool and warm colors. So those
Yes.
beigey colors that are coming back, those
Mhm.
would be warm. Am I right?
Yes, you got
Okay.
it. Yeah, you
Okay.
got it. Yeah.
Wow. Hmm.
And I would say right now, there's not really a popular warm versus cool color. It's more of, in what shade of the warms or what shade of the cools are you kind of gravitating towards?
Okay.
So jewel tones are always, I think, a favorite of people. When I say jewel tones, I mean emerald greens, navies. I would even say purple, like a dark plum. Those are actually I've seen them more and more and more and more.
Hmm.
Um, People use them in powder rooms or on even bookcases or even I've seen it. I just saw an entire room that was painted that. Then another
Wow.
name for it is aubergine, if you want to if you want to sound even more sophisticated. And the other colors I would say that I've seen kind of on repeat lately are similar to that, more of like that powder blue, but really anything from navy all the way to really pale blue, any shade of blue. I think that's always a safe
Huh.
color for people
Okay.
because it's calming. Most people like it and it kind of goes with a lot of other colors and it feels almost like a safe color. So I have seen, especially when I described earlier, kind of painting a whole room, the trend of people will start to paint the ceilings and the trim right now the same color. They're kind of they call it is it called color washing? It's called a certain name. I'm blanking, but
Ceiling and the wall is the same color.
yes, they'll paint everything the color.
I gotta get my arms around that. Press the pause button. Let's go to a call. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark, checking in from Ocala, Florida. You have a decorating question for Mary Jo?
I actually do. Yeah, Mary Jo, I'm looking at opening a small cafe,
Great.
and I found a space, and I just have a couple of questions for you. It's
Sure.
small. Okay,
Okay.
it's a Brooklyn space. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
which means it probably can only seat maybe at most 6 or 7 people comfortably. Um,
Right.
But I kind of was looking at different alternatives. I was wondering if I can get an approach on a small space, but it has beautiful architecture. It's old school, right? It's been renovated. However, I've got to do some work to it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at doing food, and I'm also looking at doing coffee, but high end. Does that make sense?
Great.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So in terms of,
Any kind of suggestions on seating and also building and there's a small kitchen in the back, but I really want stuff up front at the same time. Okay.
so the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm far from the professional, but we're talking about a small space. What are some
Yes,
things that we could do to make it look bigger?
exactly.
Hmm.
And I also don't want to crowd people in.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, should I build it from scratch, or is there something I should look for? If that makes sense.
So it's hard to know without exactly seeing kind of the orientation of where the front door is, Mark, but when have personally both designed and seen kind of those kind of smaller areas, the way that I've seen them best work is having kind of a small shelf of sorts or a small kind of counter that's probably
Right.
12, 18 inches wide. And those kind of line one of the walls with potential kind of stools. So if you want to come and order and then kind of wait or sit, some of those
Oh, that's
small
cool.
places,
Yeah.
yeah, you'd be surprised. People will still want to work there, even though they're kind of on the smaller scale. So I would try to maximize as much as you can, just kind of standing room and kind of utilizing stools. I think that's probably
Hmm.
your best bet. If you want to kind of maximize the space you have. The alternative would be to have a couple of cafe tables. Again, without knowing, I don't know exactly how big those would be. They'd probably be pretty small though. But if the space is too tight for that, I really would just recommend some bar stools with a counter.
Hmm.
And in terms of the flow, yeah, it is a challenge, I feel like, with smaller spaces. Everything has to be kind of dual purpose. So you have to make sure whatever's using, for example, like the coffee uh creamers and the sugars and that sort of thing that people want to add to their drinks after they get them, those that has to be in a spot that's not going to be blocking something else. So
Right.
yeah, I think that there's definitely a really easy way to do it. I would probably honestly, if you want to, maybe do some research and just kind of look up some other really small coffee shops in the area and go in and see what you feel like they're doing right or wrong. I feel like sometimes some in-person research can be helpful.
Cool.
No, I think that's a great idea. But yeah, and I also, I do want some comfortable seating, but I want it now. Now that I'm thinking about creating more of a flow, I think you're right about that, and have more cafe tables or round tables,
Hmm.
kind of like there's a coffee shop. It's kind of a high-end coffee shop called Financier that I kind of want to model it after. So maybe I can. I think I might go with that approach.
That
I,
sounds
I
great.
appreciate it.
As
Yeah.
as a rule of thumb, I always wondered about this, Mary Jo. If you want a space to look larger, what
Yeah.
color should you use as opposed to not?
I, I think I've seen it both ways. So you can make it everything kind of super moody. Yeah. Were you say something, Mark?
Oh, nope, we lost him.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yes, so I'll wrap it real quick. It kind of depends on how you want it to feel. A lot of times if you do want it to feel kind of that light, airy Parisian feel,
Hmm.
then using kind of different textures, you kind of have to embrace the fact that it's just going to be kind of comfy cozy, and you just add some more textural so that when you're in the space, it feels like a hug in a good way. So you might add like tin ceiling, or you might add some really cool
Okay.
tile on the front of like the
Sure.
bar that has some cool pattern on it. Or you might add some, brick veneer, adding these elements that create it to where it feels like an experience.
I see it. I
Yes,
totally see it. Yeah.
yes,
So just something that just embraces you as opposed to just a flat colored wall, just a little, not overdoing it. And I could see
yes.
the tin ceiling, which might lend itself to, I think he said it was in Brooklyn, New York. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have Jeff from Oakland, California checking in, instant feedback, steve
Okay,
at gmail.com. He says, we're redoing our living room. My wife inherited a throw rug with a black and white pattern.
okay.
What can we pair with it?
Oh man. So the first thing that I would probably say in terms of seating wise is I would probably do something that has some sort of um maybe texture to it, like a leather sofa. Again, without seeing the rug, and I'm not sure exactly what
Sure,
the
sure.
pattern is,
Could
but
be anything. I mean, zebra
yeah, it could be
pattern.
anything. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think a leather sofa could work well. I think that a colored sofa, and when I say colored, I mean like a navy or like a sage green, or if you want to go or the California vibe and adding in some really light woods, I think that having some, some seating that has some exposed kind of that lighter wood to it.
sure.
Yeah, so those are the things that are coming to mind. First off, I don't know, again, without kind of seeing what else is going on, the other thing that comes to mind potentially is having a coffee table or something that would create some sort of sculptural effect in the room. And what I mean by that is that it's not just a square or not just a rectangle, that it has some sort of detail on it that would create some interest. So maybe it has a wood base with like a glass top that's in a fun shape, or maybe it's a concrete table. These are all kind of ideas. I think if
Hmm.
he's a little bit more on the traditional side, burled wood is a texture that's really um, beautiful and is both, I would say, traditional and contemporary. And that also would look really good with it.
So in terms of color around this fixed object, it's,
Yes.
black and white pattern.
Yes.
We have to go with that. So
Yes.
around that, are there any rules of thumb with other patterns? Do you have to be careful? Let's say you put pillows up there and there's a design on that, or should you just, I hate to say play it safe, but be careful and just add, pops of color? Like what do you do?
Yeah, yeah. I just actually had someone else talk to me about this. They had a rug that they liked, but they weren't wanting to emphasize. And so we kind of talked about how something in the room has to be the focal point. So if the rug at this point is the focal point and you want it to be, then everything else can kind of play around it. And yes, simple kind of pops of color are kind of the best option for this. But if
Hmm.
you wanted to do something a little different, where let's just say you wanted something that had a lot of color, like a big abstract or a big, print of something that had lots of color in it, you can pull from those other colors and add in, something really subtle. Like, let's see, there's some pillows that are solid but have some little details to them where
Okay.
the edges are a different color.
Okay. All right. I get
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're not going over the top. We're dipping the toe in the pattern water, without
Yes.
making a big statement. Because I guess, let's look at it as that rug that his wife inherited. Guess that's the big statement, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
it sounds like a great rug. So I do think if you let that be the statement, adding some things that yes are on the more simplistic side, so that you can let that pattern dominate your
Sure.
visual kind of eye whenever you look at the space.
Hmm.
But yes, there are a lot of pillows. What I like now is that pillows sometimes aren't just two-sided things. They have like these little what they call piping, which is like the little
I
kind of
gotcha.
thing
Yep.
on the edge. Those
Yep.
are different
Totally.
colors than the actual pillow. Anyway,
Yeah.
all
I didn't
kinds of
think
fun stuff.
I didn't think of that, but that would be a nice way to just instead of just having a color, a little
Mhm.
something going on, but
Yes,
not like over the top where you got this pattern, that pattern, then you got the rug, this over there.
right.
Um, Before we run out of time,
Yeah.
what's this whole dopamine decorating thing that's going on?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That is a word that's being tossed around right now, and I like the concept behind it. Essentially, the phrase dopamine decor is supposed to be about you having everything in your house bring you some sort of dopamine, some sort of like excitement or high. So everything you are living in, you love. And what I love about that is that, no pun intended, is that you you don't have to tell yourself, kind of like the clothes in your closet that you never wear, that you kind of see but you don't really pay attention to. because you at the end of the day, you don't really like it. That's the same concept with this trend, is that everything in your house you like, you truly like, you truly want it. You like how it looks, you like how it feels, you like how it is used in the space. And so
Hmm.
I kind of think it's another phrasing for something that everyone's always wanted, but in their house. But I do like that there's an emphasis right now on it.
How do you identify? This is going to be maybe a ridiculous question,
Okay.
but
All right.
how do you
I'll do my best.
identify? Make me look good.
Right. Yeah.
How do you identify what makes you feel good? Like, how do you decide? Is it
Mm,
you walk into a store and something just feels a certain way? Is it only those items that you're connected to, like a certain family picture? Or, for me, I love tropical. So, I got a piece of coral. And,
yeah.
I can't remember what island I got it from, but it's cool. And I remember diving down and getting it. But
Hmm.
it just
Hmm.
feels good to me. And I just love the texture and the vibe on it and everything.
Hmm.
How do you decide what's gonna kick in the dopamine?
Yes. I mean, it's a good question, Steve. I usually find when I start asking people in their own homes if they like something, I'll point out something of that theirs and I say, "Do you like that?" And they usually go, And they kind of have
Hmm.
that kind of response.
Indifferent
Right,
response.
right. Indifferent response. They kind of shrug their shoulders. They kind of say, yeah, I mean, they tell me why they like it, or they tell me what it's used for. They say, oh, I don't care about it, but I I put my coffee on it when I'm watching, they have a specific use for it.
Yeah.
And so that's usually tells me that it's the function that they need, but that thing may not be the best, it may not bring them the most dopamine. But in terms
Hmm.
of small things, I think like you mentioned, your coral piece, I will sometimes reset spaces is how I describe it, where you take everything out of the room and then you only bring back what you really want. Because sometimes when you're seeing it all together, you feel this weird tie to keep it versus taking it out and then putting it back or putting it in a different spot, trying it out in a different spot if that's a possibility.
And it
So,
can be overwhelming too when you have all this stuff around, then it's
yes,
hard to, well, I like that, but I also like that, but I think I like that. Yeah, there's too much going on. So
yes,
when you streamline it, minimalize it, and then slowly bring things back, I see it. I totally see
yes,
it. Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
There isn't a hard and fast rule though with dopamine decor. It can just be small. It doesn't have to be I mean, the goal is for it to be all encompassing, but I would encourage people to not feel like they have to completely trash everything they have if they
Sure.
don't like
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a final thought. If you look at things energetically,
Hmm.
and it's been said that everything is energy,
Right.
people, objects, even when you go to a store to buy a crystal, you know, and there's, healing energy properties in that. It's been said that you're supposed to run your hand over it and you'll know, like you'll feel it. Like if you're just, over a tray of like five different crystals, you're like, oh, there's something there with that
Wow.
one. So maybe it's kind of the same process where, you're feeling it, but you have to listen to it, whatever the object is.
Yeah. I mean, and I think sometimes, I think we talked about this at some point too. There's some of my clients have there is like a memory attached to things, and those memories and those pieces, sometimes they continue on with you and sometimes they kind of lose a little bit. So I have found that there are times when if you get something that you are super excited about and it has some sort of meaning to you, and a handful of years that might change. And I think
Yeah.
you have to give yourself permission to change,
Yes.
and you have to give
Yeah,
yourself,
I got
yeah,
you, and I'm glad you said that because, and we're out of time, but this is like
yes,
I think pinnacle for purging
yes,
is that you hold on to things because you think you should because it's connected to your past. But if you sit with it and really think about it, I don't need this anymore because that was then, this is now, and it doesn't have the same meaning. But we're afraid of change. So we just keep those things
yeah,
around thinking that that
yeah,
supports us, but maybe it really doesn't. Gotta
right,
kind of dig in a little bit deeper and
yeah.
and purge. and purge.
It's super personal.
It is. Yeah.
You know, your home and your things, it's soul work in a way. Like it can be hard,
Yes.
it can be messy. So
But you know what? It's called a
gentle.
box. Put it in a box and put it aside.
right.
And then, if you're missing it, bring it out. And then if you're not, then leave it be. How do we
Yeah.
find you? You always have great ideas and great insight, Mary
Oh,
Jo. How do we connect?
thanks, Steve. Yes, you can connect through my website, riseinteriors.co.
And I'm going to reach back at some point and see your blue suggestions for my cabinets,
Yes,
because
I will. I'll see.
got a little anxiety on that
I
one.
promise it looks good. I promise it
I
looks
don't
good.
doubt it. I see it, but I need to see it, if you will.
Yes, I
Uh,
understand.
cool.
I'll
All
help
right.
you. I'll help you see the light. I'll help you see it.
Appreciate it. All right. Thanks. We'll catch up next
You're
time.
welcome.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.